Right, this is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter. Our guest for this one is a return guest. It is Rejin. Raging, however you're supposed to say it. And here's the thing, Raging, I'll just do it at the beginning as a way to like sanitize the episode so we'll get all the idiots out, right? In your quest to become Hunden 2.0, you're even now running Tricked Esports. Like, listen, I mean, it's a mean joke, but it's not a bad one. It's not a bad one. Okay.
I mean, I've been there before. It's just been like 10 years ago almost.
Okay, true. If people don't know, by the way, Tricked basically is like the people who before this were doing the TSM project and then were sort of like left without an org for a while, and then now they've come and it's like you and Valde and a bunch of other people, right, and some younger players.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when TSM cut it, then looking for a new place to go and had a few offers lined up, but I really want to keep working with Valde, so when this opportunity arose, then we kind of took it, so.
Exactly. It only took you a year or two to figure out what took me even less time, which is fuck TSM, but that's totally unrelated. That's just for the League of Legends fans who are watching the show. So, yeah, who knew? Who knew that's how it worked out? And also, crazy idea, Rejin. This will never happen again in history. Imagine TSM, the org, not appreciating the qualities of a bunch of Danish players they have under contract.
I mean, that
could never happen.
No, that couldn't happen.
Never. Right, anyway, obviously the guest always starts with the good point here, Rejin. So what good point are we bringing to the table today? What's good in CS2?
Well, I actually thought about this a lot because at first I hated VRS, like the way it was introduced, like how it fucked over the whole scene, especially the lowest tier scene and stuff like that. But now I actually see like some kind of benefits to it, and those are the small local LAN events coming back. There is this LAN in Sweden where in NIP 9 we're gonna be there. There's gonna be the one in Las Vegas where I think NIP is gonna go to.
And the like Philadelphia type one or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think actually that's a really positive thing because when it brings back a lot of nostalgia for me, especially like because I used to take my PC on the train, go to all these biocs and play. That's how you did it back in 1.6 and CS4, right? And it was not uncommon to go like to a different event every month around Denmark, right, to play these small tournaments. And later on, you saw like bigger teams coming to it, like the MTWs, NAVI, etc. Right? They were also coming to these events around in Denmark and stuff. There was the Copenhagen Games for a while. The SHG Open back in 2006. I think MIBR was there.
Yeah,
that was the first time I met Coco. Got my head blown off on cobblestone against MIBR against Coco in his prime time. That was not fun, but that's how it is. But it just brings back a lot of memories, and I think that's actually a really good thing that we get a lot more LAN tournaments, especially for smaller teams as well, where you might not be ranked, but there's a possibility to go to these events and actually play some of the bigger dogs and come up, right? So that for me is like a really, really positive thing that came out of this, where I didn't see that as a positive at all before that it actually happened, right? So
it's pretty cool. Giving stock or just giving legitimacy to tournaments that otherwise were sprinkled through the calendar, but not necessarily a talking point. Sure, Epic LAN or Fragadelphia or Launders LAN would happen, and sometimes I don't know. I would just kind of like tune in for one game of these events, but now to see, I mean, we've talked about. I guess we've talked about both sides of this. How it's kind of weird that it happens because we're now getting teams like NIP flying all the way to Vegas to try to just get some points so that they can maybe get some invites. But then I mean, I'll say selfishly, I think it's kind of cool because I might go to Frag Vegas. I don't know if I'm going to, I'm not going to play. I'm 90% certain I'm not going to play, but it's under a 4-hour drive. It's like an hour flight for me from LA. And it's like, I didn't think Snappy and Wrinkle were going to be near me playing a really competitive tournament for themselves. I think that's kind of fun. But I guess the weird part is just that should these tournaments have this much implication on who makes it to the major? Probably not. Like, of all the tournaments that have tech issues or I guess they have to fit some kind of standard for VRS to even count. Like the Launders LAN one earlier this year kind of had some problems and they couldn't play part of the group stage out, and so it took away its VRS standing, or they had to like play the other half out online essentially, so it just kind of lost its whole thing. I don't really think there's that part is a little bit sketchy, but all in all, in terms of just making Fragadelphia, Epic Land, etc. into talking points throughout the calendar. I think it's kind of fun. I don't know how like good for the scene it is as a whole in terms of fairness and everything, but it's interesting.
I mean, so my counterpoint to like the fairness point you just brought up there was that you saw a team like Endpoint and stuff cut down the whole CS division, right? This gives them access to actually invest in CS, and yeah, you're gonna be investing in CS, the salaries and everything, and the travel and to go, because you have to pay for these. It's not like you're gonna be invited there and there's free flights and hotels and everything, right? But at least it gives like an entry to go there, right? And with my ugly point we'll talk about later, it also goes hand in hand, because for me, how like I'm personally like I love that CCT and EPL, like the European Pro League and everything, are having these online tournaments, but it's also like they're playing constantly. Like it's just like you wake up, oh, another CCT. I don't even care to watch it.
No.
You know, like it's not even it's just another online game where if you have this environment where there's actually this LAN going on, and there's like a quite decent teams, like you can take the teams from the CCT and put them in a LAN environment. That will make it much more interesting, right? It will be like kind of the DreamHack Opens that it used to be, right? Like a part of the quality of teams, right? Because the quality of teams in the DreamHack Opens, how it used to be, was like this tier 2, like the higher tier 2, maybe the lower tier 1, a single team was there, stuff like that. So I think it's actually gonna be really, really fun to see, and I love the idea that all LAN tournaments have some kind of VRS like point system, whatever, right? Of course, it has to be under the right circumstances, but I think that's why they have the rules for it, right? You have to apply for it, so.
Yeah, by the way, on the last thing you said there, that is actually one thing I think is slightly mistaken about, which is that if you think about the way the tournament circuit used to work, this is actually what we want back, is actually what we already had just before COVID, which is that we had like the massive tier 1 scene, but there was a really healthy tier 2 scene. Like you say, DreamHack Open was probably the most famous one, but then we'd have the sprinkling of the other events, that like one that they have, that like V4 Future Festival in like the fucking Czech Republic and I can't remember what 4 countries it is. You know, the ones that are in like that middle area.
It's Hungary.
Yeah, there you go. There's those ones that there'll be that every year. There would be Copenhagen Games, etc. There was a bunch and the cool thing about those, as you say, was right. That actually was basically the equivalent of what CCT is now. Like that's where you find out who the good tier 2 teams are. Because as you say, you get the odd, like it's the same concept. If you didn't get into via the qualifier, or you just did badly at a bunch of the big tier 1 lands, sometimes if you were someone like North, you would actually still go to like a DreamHack Open, because the idea is it's something to keep playing. It's also something to win, by the way, to show you like better than the teams at that level. But it meant that actually you had quite a healthy mix of teams there. It was quite competitive. Like if people don't know, right before COVID came, the teams you would see at a DreamHack Open are exactly the teams that then percolated and became really good in CS online when they had time to get good. Like it was like Gambit and fucking, it was even like before they won the major, came second at that major, like a Vanguard and Furia and fucking Tricked and Heroic and these sorts of teams. These are the teams when they were on the way up. That's where you would play. And here's the difference. When you have CCT, one, as you say, we're going to get into this later. Unfortunately, that's one of the things that people don't know, that why people like Kassad keep saying publicly that like there's loads of match fixing. People say it's even infected tournaments of that level. Like it's not just like, you know, like random. It used to before be like you have an online qualifier and someone does it at one cynical point in the bracket where they can still like win the series, or, you know, they have another life or something. Now people are just straight up doing it supposedly in like real competitive matches that are supposed to count towards the circuit. And then also, I agree with you on the CCT like schedule. That's probably the thing that people don't realize is the most inhuman part of it. Put it this way, it's actually harder to get pro players and coaches who are playing owning CCTs to come on this show than it is to get the biggest talents and players in the world who are at the main lands. Because the difference is, Rejin, they know if they're not at a specific land, and I can just go, oh, what about Thursday after that? The CCT guys always tell me, like, oh, I have no idea. Like, I'll have to find out, like, what happens in CCT, basically. Like, am I playing all day today? Are we out after an hour? Like, I can't know, basically. Like, there's no logic as to my schedule. So I also think, right, people don't realise, in some fucked up way, you actually are in more of a grind and a rat race. If you don't get to go to the LAN, if you just sat at home trying to play the million online tournaments, and the worst thing about that is, it has like a Sisyphus feel, where if you don't win the CCT as an IP showing, you basically just go all the way through your day, and at the end, you barely accomplished anything. It's like, right, well, time to wake up tomorrow and go back to work. And it's like, yeah, it's not even like, at least at LANs, you get a feeling of, oh, someone made the quarters, right? That'll have gotten them a certain amount of points, right? The next they're moving up in the world, or they're better than this team. And I also agree, by the way, in general with the LAN thing. That is how Counter-Strike culture is LANs. Like, difference in games like League of Legends was they very early got taken over by the game developer, and they set all these like leagues and, you know, traditional sports form. Counter-Strike, like Call of Duty in America, has always been about going to a regional LAN. That is how you get known. That's how you meet the other great players. I even think, by the way, as we're implied about CCT, etc., it's a way more legit environment. So the difference is, you might get people being salty because you like shit talk them, or you beat them online and then you like banter them at the LAN. But the difference is, if you beat them at the LAN, that is the most time-honoured way to prove to people that were more famous than you that you're good and they should recruit you to their team. Like, that's actually the ultimate way it happens. Like, famously, that's why one thing I do miss from 1.6 Rejin is all those like qualifiers for like World Cyber Games and ESWC, etc. Because what it meant was, even if you had the best team in the world in your country, they had to go to the local LAN that you were going to, and you had a chance to beat them. Like, if you actually had like some like fucking up and coming sick young star, like some config-esque player or whatever, you could maybe get a winner from this qualifier, and then either like that player gets into their team or you become the top team. Like, actually, the career opportunities were mega. And so basically, to bring it all back to, yeah, go on.
I mean, that's just a funny story, actually, with Get Right. Like, I remember him, like, coming to all these small Danish lands.
True, yeah.
Like, like he literally would just find a mixed team and just go, just to prove himself. And he played every single event.
Yeah.
Like, I remember, I don't know what year it was, 2003, 2004, maybe around that time. Maybe 5, I can't remember the years. But, like, I always remember seeing him at these events, playing with trays and stuff. And he was just banging out heads on LAN. And then suddenly SK picked him up. I think it was the first big team and stuff like that. So I mean, it just gives like a lot of good opportunities compared to these like these online tournaments where it just seems like everyone is drowning in matches, right? Yeah. I think, like, to come back to one thing you said, like, you have to grind so much. Just look at Fnatic the other day. They had like, was it 12 BO3s in 3 days? Or it was something absurd amount of matches, right?
Yeah. That just sounds like torture. Well, that's some Guantanamo Bay shit. Your schedule, sir, is 12 matches in 3 days. Like, the fuck?
I remember, like, I saw, I think it was Blame posted, like, they had like 4 BF3s in one day, like, starting at 10 in the morning, right? It's just like.
Meanwhile, in Valorant, that's like 6 months of play, and they're outside when they play. If they did the opposite one, if you flipped it around in Valorant and they played 3 series in 12 days, they'd be out with like picket signs, like, "We can't work under these conditions. We're burned out."
I think actually Samuelson said from Fnatic that the CS team played equivalent matches that their Valorant team did for 5 months in 3 days.
Reasonable. That's so stupid. What a clown show fucking esports is. Crazy. Why does it have to be one or the other? Why can't it just be something in the middle, you know, something reasonable? But anyway, to bring it all the way back, the reason why I actually can see why you put it in good for once, though, is if people see like the more recent changes they're making, they clearly are trying to address this literal option of what happens to tier 2 tournaments. Because at the moment, I actually agree with what Maui was saying. The real problem you have is, it's like Valve, because they have this weird thing where they want to sort of like oversee things, but you know the Valve way is never like, right, it's just this. It's more like a guideline, and you see who fits within that roughly. What they've done is they've made the mistake that at tier 1, they're right, you don't need to do anything actually. Those tournament organisers, just like in Dota, can do it all themselves. You just have to sort of give them the event and say you can have the event on this month, and then they'll run it all. But what they haven't realised is we don't have tier 2 like we did before. Like we said, we don't have those dream acts in the same way. Like even ESL Challenger, you could tell was done as sort of like a cynical thing to qualify into like ESL events, etc., and as a way for like second teams to just go there. It wasn't the same vibe. So I think the problem they have is things like Fragadelphia and Launderslands. They aren't really invented to be like the fucking 11th best CS2 tournament of the year, are they? Like, they're obviously supposed to be like regional things with fun elements. I mean, the reason why, by the way, guys, even though he's a friend of the show, I always bag on Launders for that Laundersland is because, one, you all did like actual pieces of shit pretend like I failed at Flashpoint when I was the fucking creative director. So I was like running the online bracket and like setting the server up and like negotiate with teams, which I wasn't, obviously. And then two, obviously, in this particular case, because not that many people people are going to watch a tournament like that. That's also why it becomes philosophical, Maui, because the problem is, if nobody watches a LAN at which two groups had ever played, was the LAN ever played? It's actually a philosophical question that the Zen Buddhist monks of the age could ponder for many, many years. Whatever.
And I also think like if you have a London LAN, right, and then
Okay.
you actually have like some European teams or whatever coming there, it's also more fun to watch, right? Like I at least for me, right? I would probably watch it compared to watch like some like 8 teams of random NA teams where I don't know 7 of the teams and be like,
Right.
Right.
And I'm just going to say this as well, Launders, since you're the one who always goes on about racism. Now he's so scared right now. But here's the thing. It's actually quite a safe joke, but it's a good one, Maui, don't worry. That's the sentence you never want to hear, is it? Anyway, listen, calm down. The joke is, Launders, though, if you know the famous story from the end of 1.6, you're not helping beat the allegations about Indians putting tournaments on that never happened, are you? Between you and Sky Esports, like, can you just fucking finish a LAN, please? Like, again, it's your people. You made that whole thing, mate, so stick with your own and all that, just. Because if you don't know, by the way, there was actually a tournament at the end of 1.6 that just like never happened, that like Moscow 5 went to in India, and they went there and they just took like pictures, and for real it was just like a bunch of tables, like they never brought any PCs or anything. It just never happened. I think it wasn't actually the Sky one, that was obviously a different company now with the modern day stuff, but it was some mad shit like that, like it was some like esports festival there or whatever. Right, let's go on now. Maui, what is your good point?
Yeah. I can say I was kind of thinking of putting this on the hot take show. Then I realized it's not really hot enough, and Kassad would have made fun of me for even bringing it to the table. It's just that in an off season now that the dust is settled.
By the way, you are aware as well that at this point in time, the downside of Hot Take Point made is now everyone just thinks all your hot takes is shit. Because I saw, even though you were memeing about like Shiro 2019 being like top 5 opera of all time, because you were obviously like referencing the MonteCristo thing. People just believe anything you say now, Maui. Like you can actually just put like GL #1 opera, and they'd be like, "What a moron Maui is! He's not even an opera." Like you can't win now, mate. You can't make jokes anymore. It's just over for you, I'm afraid.
I know. Like at this point, everything's just taken completely at face value and out of context.
But by the way, shout out to the pro players for having the most dog shit rankings I've ever seen. But you all just get to skate by because you're all legendary players. So magically, all the fans don't think they're just cretins, Maui, who can't play the game. Like, oh, weird. Even though they are doing like my joke one of like, my joke one isn't even that far from reality. You know where I was like saying that if you ask like a pro player now, like his top 3 opers of all time, he's like, I've got to go Simple, Zemu, and 2019 Gratisfaction. It's like, all right, well, whatever. I guess we're just in Cloud Cuckoo Land with your fantasy picks, but okay. Tell me about how she wrote on a year we didn't even see him play LAN. No, the joke is, they're even talking about Chiro from these DreamHack Opens. That's the worst thing. They're talking about, like, Chiro when he played against Tricked at that DreamHack Winter. What are you talking about, you lunatic? Where's Kenny S, you mad fuck? Anyway, bring it all back. What was the good point?
Yeah, the point is just that in an offseason that was characterized by some blockbuster moves like Robs to Vitality and Spinks to Mao, Liege to FaZe, I'd say that the clearest upgrade after 3 months of play has been Jota to Eternal Fire. We've talked about Eternal Fire before here, where it's just they're on the uptrend. They're an elite team in the sense that they make it to every single playoffs. Whether they go deep at those playoffs is a different question. But for me, I like what Rops is providing for Vitality. It's clearly very good. But there were aspects to Spinks' game that probably actually help Vitality in certain ways. There's obviously things when it comes to Spinks to Maus where it's like, yes, as an individual 1-to-1, he's better than Shuhei, but down the line, I'm pretty sure you're going to lose some sort of sense of calling, probably mid-rounding. Thankfully, Maus has actually played very well, but there seems to be some teething issues with some of their offenses. And obviously, Unleash to FaZe, that just hasn't quite panned out yet. Still, a lot had to change for that roster move to be bedded in. But no, Jota 1-to-1 for Calyx is just like, no, they just done an excellent job on this one. The Eternal Fire guys clearly know how to use him. He's good on practically every map. I've seen Inferno, I think, has been his worst map statistically, but in terms of watching him play versus Calyx, I'm just way more confident with him towards on lurks and in pit and everything like that. I almost think at the beginning, what I was kind of thinking in the 1-to-1, the A to B comparison is that I think Calyx, his aim sometimes looks a little bit better. I mean, I'm just going to say Jota's aim is just way more consistent. He's better at just tracking aim. Calyx would, in a lot of ways passed the eye test because he would just hit some insane headshots, but you'd kind of forget some of the rounds where people run into his bomb site, he just instantly dies, just gets completely flashed. Like jottA's, I'd say, such a more modern player, a guy that seemingly has studied the executes of other teams. Like he dodges the flashes really well, then he turns back into fights, then he's able to mow them down. He rotates a lot faster than Calyx did. Like even if he's not as careful sometimes, I just think that he's moving more places more quickly and he's more of an active player, and that's helping Eternal Fire out too. And yeah, overall, just good point is just that this 1-to-1, we've talked about Eternal Fire before, but I'm just going to say like simply jottA as an individual is my good point.
I would agree on that, actually. I think it's really nice pick up from him. And to be fair, like, to give him a little bit of protection bubble or whatever you want to call it, like, he never played Inferno in Sankel, as far as I remember.
Right.
So, I mean, like, that's one thing to have in the count, right? You have to probably learn that, right? And I also think, like, Calyx and jottA, if you take them up, I think it's a straight-up upgrade as well. I mean, you had Calyx sometimes bang out some hits, but that was, like, that was far and in between, I think, like before it happens compared to jottA. And I think I really like their lineup as well. And I think I agree with you. They're not really there yet to win tournaments, but I do think like top 4 placements at a big event, that is definitely within reach now, and probably even a final here and there, right? So, yeah, we will see. But I also like to say, like with the little thing with the Robs to Vitality, I think that's a great pick up as well. And then actually Mouse Spinks, I think that will be my later bad take, but it actually makes sense as well because, like, yeah, it's just straight up firepower, and with the position Shui was playing and stuff, it makes complete sense in my opinion.
By the way, the obvious meme would be, if I wanted to be the reply guy, I could obviously get you on this one, Maui, and go, well, actually, technically, Maui, the clearest upgrade was obviously whoever Nico replaced, wasn't it? But I feel like that one's like sort of cheating because I've just picked a team that couldn't win any games and now they win some games. I know what you mean, though, of like the big high-profile moves that people actually wanted to go through. This is probably the most slept-on one because when you looked at the team, and with you, by the way, one of the problems you had was Calyx was a very weird player, and that even though he was sort of playing like some sort of weird supportive role, he actually did still have crazy headshot ability, but then he had that weird thing that Vu pointed out, which is that he doesn't actually aim at the head though. So it's like, on the one hand, you almost like begrudgingly like think, well, you must be really sick in some way, like your flicks must be fucking awesome, but also like, why are we doing that? And then that's actually the reason why, if you remember when this move was made, a lot of us were like, there's not really any downgrade to this though, because like you already were sort of going from skill from that position anyway. That's the thing you were bigging up Calyx for. So I actually think, if anything, it's one of the rare times I've ever seen a change have zero downside. Like, it seems like he's slotted in on almost all the maps. By the way, they were already really good at Anubis. They're even better now because he's really insane on T-side of Anubis. Like, that's why actually right now they are just like the best Anubis team. So in general, I will say, I do think this is a massive positive. Put it this way, if he hadn't have joined, it would be way easier for me to just make a whole case that like their team is just Xantaras, or it's like having Anubis, or it was like whatever the veto allows at the moment. Whereas when you actually add him into the mix, the thing is, then the just aggregate skill level of their team is just really impressive, like legitimately. Like, if you look at their team, people keep missing this part because they're thinking of like, oh, it's just cool because they're all Turkish. Like, no, if you just made rosters and you know, like the FIFA rating when you play FIFA online of like, you know, what overall, like this player's an 89 and this one's like an 84 or whatever. If you did that with like skill or aim in the game, I think Eternal Fire would be like top 3 in fucking CS2. Like, they have a really fucking strong lineup of players where like the joke is, even Madger actually has the odd time when he just frags out. Like, that does happen sometimes. So no, I think in general it's a great move. And I do also think as well, since in their team it's so obvious they live and die sometimes by the Xantaras performances, it is clear to point out it isn't 1 year ago. It's not only Xantaras that wins you a game. I've even seen them actually win the odd map now where he does just not that well. And one of the reasons why is this guy also actually now shares in the fragging. Like, it's actually decent distribution. So it's really not what people want it to be, which is like have you noticed that's one of the things that's been quite interesting is, even though before it was like, oh, this team's like a death trap for Xantaras, it's like, it's not really actually right now. Like, unless he wanted to literally join like G2 or FaZe, actually right now there's not that many teams that are better than Eternal Fire. Like, they're actually pretty fucking good. And I'm with you, we won't go into it because it's obviously not a good part, but I do actually feel like almost everything is there for them to win a tournament. I even think their map pool's fucking awesome. They just can't be reliable on it in the playoffs. That's all.
And
like, you know,
just to add to that, right? Just remember, their best map, Vertigo, got traded out for Train.
Yeah, true.
Right? So they were actually...
And by the way, they've tried to adapt to the Train. They've been playing it, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's just funny. Like, they were one of the best team, if not the best team, on Vertigo.
Yeah, for sure.
And now they, like, if you just imagine, we still have that map pool. it's very interesting to see. Like, I think they could win our tournament straight up.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Because, like, against FaZe and stuff, you had to ban it, right? And they would always get their Anubis pick. So, yeah, I mean, like, with everything going on, I think Eternal Fire is looking really solid.
Right. Wait there a second. Yeah, it's all good. Right, I actually want to pick. This is why I'm actually glad this show ended up being done today. I actually do want to pick, since we've done this yesterday, the day we're recording now is Saturday. Yesterday we were going to record this show, didn't happen, whatever. But the reason I'm actually glad that match didn't happen is now, even though, hold your horses, remember, Pro League is not a massive arena event. We don't have all the... Oh my God, Carrigan. You don't have all that, but at the same time, playoffs are still playoffs. Like, I actually do think it is a positive sign that actually MongolZ fucking beat NAVI and the way that they did it. Because, bro, they could have done it even more dominantly. They actually sort of chilled on that second map, and NAVI was getting a bunch of rounds coming back. They actually completely convincingly beat NAVI, like straight up in a playoff match. And even though, listen, you still have to pass the mouse test and go to a big arena and do it in the arena and get past... People don't seem to realise it's one thing to beat a team in a group stage, which is what MongolZ used to do to all the top teams. Playoffs is different. Even if it's not the arena, in your brain, it's still playoffs. But it's still NAVI. You're still looking at that bracket, and a lot of people are going like, right, it's Spirit, NAVI, and Vitality. They're the three top teams, right? They're supposed to go through. You think of the intimidation factor from last year, all those million finals they were in. They actually were one of the most... They probably had the best floor to their game of any team. Like, even if the players play badly, they could adapt it. So I actually think this is like an underrated one. Because NAVI's on the downswing, we'll talk about that in another point, I've no doubt. I think people are missing that. Like, this is like another like check mark if you're watching the MongolZ rise. Because I do feel like when we've had discussions, since we just talked about Eternal Fire, because those two teams have burned everyone in the playoffs so much, MongolZ and Eternal Fire, where in the group stage they look like they can beat anyone, and sometimes do, but then you go to the playoffs and then they can lose to seem like anyone in the playoffs. I do think you've got to like track those teams, and the difference is, one, because jottAAA only just joined Eternal Fire, and then two, because like MongolZ themselves got way better in the last few months, and they actually haven't been in that many playoffs at LANs if people don't know. I think people are writing these teams off too soon. I think people are all fatigued from when like Mouse spent like a year and a half not like winning a tournament that was like an arena event, and they think it means that if you're like a choker, you're a choker forever, so they're like out on you already. Like, I'm not out on MongolZ at all. I think this is like a mega sign that they beat NAVI here. Like, that's a massive fucking win right there. Like, it's another reason why now I do look to the next LAN tournament. Like, bro, it's time. Just go to the final. You could actually just be in the final if not winning an event right now. It's totally plausible. So the MongolZ uptick, I guess, is my good point.
I completely agree. They are so instant, man. Like, their aim is just crazy. We practiced them the other day, and Jesus Christ, man, it's just like insta headshot. Like, if you're not there 100%, you just get your headshot off like instantly. Like, it's just to another level, I would say. And when they can learn to control their emotions or whatever things that or lack of experience in these playoff games or arena games, right? Then I think you're gonna see. I completely agree with you on this one. Like, and I think it's the same with Eternal Fire, right? You have jottAAA and Vicadia, who's both young players, right? And coming in to have to learn to play this environment. I would say Santaris and Voxic are like the veterans there. Mayor is a veteran, but he's not a veteran in being in playoffs and playing in front of a crowd, right? So that's also new to him, right? So I do actually believe, like, I agree with you that those two teams, especially, like, people are sleeping on them way too hard.
I'm impressed with the way that they were able to beat NAVI. I guess the firepower is a pretty big aspect of it, but they didn't get caught off they weren't caught off guard as much as I figured they would be. Also, I feel like the whole thing with MongolZ is like, sometimes it feels like if things are going wrong in a round, I guess they sometimes don't really make the best team plan. And I feel like even in slightly disadvantaged situations versus versus NAVI, they were still able to, like, Techno was so good at just finding sliver gaps and just being able to just kind of figure out what needs to be accomplished in a round, or like covering an angle that otherwise needs to be watched and things like that. And the whole, like, Rejin, when you bring up I guess they need to control their emotions. I guess the one guy that really stood out to me was, yeah, even if your rounds got tense, Techno was so good at clawing them back. I guess it's a guy that we don't always talk about, because Senzu has been the star player for such a long time, and we like
put it this way, he's treated like he's like Sanji of their team, basically, by the international community, right? It's true.
Yeah, he doesn't get the most love in terms of probably weaponry. He sacrifices.
Don't people just say he's there for vibes or some like toxic ass shit?
Yeah. Yeah, no, but he was actually their best player yesterday, and not even just on the stats. It was just like obviously intense moments. This guy was the main one in like a 2vx, 3vx, where it's like he's gonna get that pivotal kill to bring the round back. So I honestly, I didn't think I'd be shouting him out after a game versus Navi. He's usually the weak link, so. To see them play in this way, I guess my greater point with just bringing up Techno is that it kind of can be anybody, and it kind of has to be anybody, because we've talked a little bit about the playoff woes, or I brought it up before, like Senzu's numbers drop off precipitously in an arena. Like I think in the games that I looked at over the last
it's go off the cliff, mate. Yeah, it's some stone shit.
Yeah,
it really is.
It's like I think at the Shanghai Major, Katowice, and Cluj, it was a 0.80 rating. Like that, it's just over, and it's like you could go over like sample size, but I think it was like it's like 4 series or something like that, when he's normally doing pretty well, and like his hands fix. His hands definitely fix.
Oh, right, okay.
But like at this point, at Pro League, not in some of those other tournaments, and But Mazinho is also just popping off too. I feel like there were the fun take to make about the Mongols last year was that after watching Senzu collapse in the quarterfinals at the Shanghai Major and Mazinho doing pretty well, it was that Mazinho has the potential to be the best player for the Mongols this year. Honestly, I don't even know. Like I legitimately don't know who's going to be the best player at the end of the year for the Mongols.
Yeah.
Given how he's performing in certain matches, I think Senzu's set up to be the best player. I think he's given the most resources to have the highest rating and get the most kills. But in terms of like just eye test role for role, Mazinho seems so overqualified. Like he was taking duels, solo duels against Bit yesterday and winning them. Like they know where each other is. Like Bit knows where Mazinho is, Mazinho knows where Bit is, and Mazinho would win the fight. And I'm like, man, I thought Bit was going to be a top 5 rifler this year, and this Mazinho guy is just clocking him. So I wish I could say more about like, and the strategy too that Blitz is putting up together, but it's like, some of the rounds did come down to just like Mazinho hitting a really good headshot or Techno having good individual awareness, and I don't think he was necessarily set up. So I'm not like going away from that. That was the first exciting thing about the IHC lineup that became the Mongols, is that they're actually playing good CS all in all, which is rare from Asia. It's now I'm taking the strategy for granted, and now I'm seeing that the individuals can hold their own against some of the best players in the world, which is awesome.
By the way, here's my asshole joke. The joke is, this is another example of cursed magical artifacts, Rejin, because what happens is, there's a concept I like to always apply on this show, which is if someone went to like a Arabian bazaar and they traded for this magical item called the cursed monkey paw, what happens is when you make a wish, it always comes true, but it's like one of those ones where like a genie does it, but like if you're not exact in your phrasing, it'll come true, but in the way you don't want, right? So obviously what happened here is, since finally Mongols makes it to all these stages, they went and got one of these artifacts, and then they thought, right, well, fuck, last thing I want to do, Senzu, is like, I don't want to fucking choke. So he just went and he wished, and he said, just allow me to play CS on stage the way Forrest would. And then the problem is he didn't ask, I meant the old Forrest, not fucking now. He's like all old and retired and shit. So there you go. You just get put something 0.8 rating. There you go. He's killing it. Just listen.
I actually agree with you, Maui. And
obviously not on my point. Man was a joke. Yeah, I'll keep going.
Well, I just say I get it. But it just brings me back. I don't know if you remember this, Duncan. You probably do. Like with the We Made Fox and stuff. With
sure, yeah.
They were banging out heads so hard.
Yeah, they were mega.
But they lacked so much tactical depth and stuff. That's why they never got it on.
Yeah.
And I think like. Yeah, it gets to my bad point in a second where we can
all good
collaborate the whole the whole Mongols thing, I think.
No, agreed, especially because right now is not the time to talk about bad things, Rejin. It's time to talk about very good things, like Into the AM, who make these lovely T-shirts. You see, I've got a print one here with sort of a pastoral Japanese design with the rising sun or whatever you call that there. Nothing political. That's just a nice thing about Japan. Whatever. Anyway, you have to understand, Maui, the copy's never going to quite get through the way they write it. And so, anyway, obviously, by the way, if you don't know, people who watch this show and the LFN network have also been very good to LFN. It's actually been one of the sponsors that you guys have bought from the most. It's also, by the way, one of the absolute best products that we've actually had on this show. Like, unironically, I would buy from this company myself. Like, one of the things I actually am impressed about with the t-shirt is, like I always say, I'm used to t-shirts being like fairly low quality items of clothing. This is actually very high quality. This is another one. You haven't seen me wear this one as often. Notice how none of the colours have faded after loads of washes. You haven't got any of those like cracks that appear on the actual print. Somehow the print just looks exactly the same. It's just as stretchy. It's not all starchy, like all the colour hasn't faded. It's actually mega. So they have their usual thing where you can always, whenever you use like LFN as the code, get 10% off. And remember, the cool thing about about Into the AM is two details. One, they stack the discount code with everything else they're doing. So first of all, you can actually buy a bunch of like packs of tees where you can get 3 graphic tees like this style. There's a million of those options, by the way, for $61.95, or you can get 3 basic tees, as in like just a single colour, just basic looking but high quality, for $52.95. Then if you use code Into the M/LFN, you'd get 10% off anyway. But right now it stacks with their clearance sale, which is going on, where you can get, depending on the item, up to 70% off graphic tees. Then you use intotheM.com/LFN and you will get 10% on top of that. So it all stacks together. Thank you to everyone who supports Into the M and gets these wonderful t-shirts and Into the M themselves. Right, now let's talk about the bad things in CS. So Rejin, what is bad right now?
I think I should start here because it's a good follow-up for what Maui just ended on here. Like, it's the state of Counter-Strike. Like,
okay,
as you guys know, I've been playing CS since my first LAN tournament was in a basement with 100 people back in 1999.
He even looks a little bit like a Danish Get Right, to be fair. He looks like we're separated at birth, like, one of those things. Like, wrong hospital, did he get mixed up? What's going on?
Like, he was just better in CS.
Right, he got all the CS gene, right?
Yeah, he got all it, yeah. But I remember when I was introduced to CS, there was this, like, it was, like, really about mechanics, of course. Like, if you didn't win your duel, you would just lose, right? That's how it is. Yeah. But then the more you got into it, this tactical depth, strategy, everything, right? You saw these cool fakes, these new smokes, new flashes, this new the timings of everything, a really cool execute, stuff like that. And when the years go on, like we went from 1.3, 1.5, 1.6 to CS Source, it all got developed more and more. Then CSGO came, put the scenes together. And you just saw this whole new game basically being played with a lot of tactical aspects coming in from Source, the mechanical sides from 1.6, and just met in this really beautiful game, right, that we all love today. And you just see like CS2 now, it's just all about banging hits. Like you said in the end, like the tactical is like, you just go up and shoot a guy and you win the round. Like, that's basically how most rounds are, even in the best teams. Like, of course, they have these nice plays, timings, flashes, and everything. But when it all comes to it, it's just about raw aim. And I think that's kind of a shame. Personally, I'm not saying CS is bad because of it, but that's how I feel about it. I miss the more tactical depth, like the Astralis era. There was really high tactical with the nades, etc. Big has been a team where you had the legendary God B there, right, making up all these new tactics. Pathings, timings, flashes, whatever. You just don't see it as often anymore. Now it's just about who bang out the most hits. And for me, that's a really sad thing, in my opinion. I don't know how you feel about that. And I think also one more thing to add to that, it also comes down to the map pool and the map designs itself. Like, it used to be like this in 1.6 and Source. If you wanted to boost, you could boost anywhere. Like, if you want to do a quad tower to make up to some rooftop, you can go there, right? You can't do any of that in CS2. So you know exactly like the heights of the angles, and which many angles they can be at. It's not this easy to be CT anymore as it used to be. You probably remember Inferno, right? In 1.6 on the archway, where you could do a triple boost up, and you could actually be in this small edge and see through like this, rooftop, whatever, right? You would have a massive advantage, right? And really hard to BT if you don't do the correct flashes and stuff. And I think there is so many flaws in the designs of maps when it comes to that. Just look at Train, right? Train has nothing to do with Train if you look back at 1.6, right?
Yeah.
There's like
used to be really tactical, right? Amazingly,
Yeah.
that's like a
Exactly.
DM, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and like
Yeah,
there was
true.
like two heavens, right? There was one for over the T side and the CT side, and there's
Yes.
like under the trains, over the trains, uh, and then you can talk about 1.6 not being too tactical, but at least because of the smokes and everything, right? But still, right? There was a lot of movement around, and it felt like you were really in the open. When you join Train now and go outside, you feel like you're kind of inside. You know, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's very cramped in my opinion, and I don't like that. I really dislike the designs of the maps right now.
I, there's
It's
so
a
many
big one,
points.
Mao. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's so many points here, and I feel like I'm glad that you're bringing it up because I mean I play a lot still, and I feel like there's the first thing with headshotting and headshotting and such is just like the map design. I that's something that immediately clicked in my head before you even brought up that point. I was thinking the map design now is so much more inclined to just fighting. Like Mazinho brought up what he would do as a dream map pool yesterday with Freya in like just one of those like between map segments, and he put Dust 2, Ancient, Cache, Mirage.
This guy's just a pugger or something. What's going on at all?
You're putting every puggy map.
It's like an FPL player at 3 in the morning.
Yeah, his other 3 maps were interesting. He put Inferno, Train, and Overpass, and I don't know, like, I mean, eventually, like, I mean, he didn't put Nuke, obviously. It's just that I think a lot of people that are at the highest level now are just honing in so much more on mechanics, and like the Mongols right now, like, because, and I think strategy is kind of getting flattened a lot, because if there's a team with good tactics, you're just going to end up stealing their strategies anyways, and you're going to try to learn the ins and outs of it. And even if you don't execute it perfectly, you're probably just going to shoot better than them if you're a team like, say, FaZe or Vitality or whatever. You know, like you just have the players that are probably going to be able to thrive in those kinds of situations. And like the intricacies of strats are somewhat taken away because, and also and it kind of leads me to another point, is like utility in this game just feels so much weaker than it did in some of the other versions of Counter-Strike. Like the primary one I'm talking about is the smokes. Like I think that the smoke change was a very fun mechanic when it first came out for CS2. You can blow open the smoke, you can counterplay it. I think dynamism and being able to interact more with your opponent is generally a great thing in all competitive gaming. If there's plays that people can make that have no instant counter, it kind of takes away how fun and instantaneous the game can be. But the longer this goes on, the more I find out, oh wow, like Nuke has really lost a lot of its like the tactics of it, because people now are just breaking smokes. They're shooting through the edges of it. People are playing on the edges of smokes too now. I liked and see I now that I really think about it, I'm actually, one ways were bad. I didn't like one ways, but I think I'm getting rose tinted glasses about the fact that someone pushing through a smoke in CSGO would be gray screen until they're completely out of that smoke. But now you can just sit on the edge of a smoke and you can play around opponent's utility in a way where their smoke almost becomes your advantage. And that's not because the opposing team is throwing bad smokes. Like, these are the best and most tactical teams in the world. And yet people are still playing between the edge of the molly at the bottom of Ancient and between the smoke there, and they're just putting their best fragger in that like edging spot between the molly and the smoke where there's a weakness, and then you can just shoot them. Like, it feels ridiculous, and it feels counterintuitive to what smokes are supposed to provide, which is cover to the team that's trying to take new space or at least shroud what they're trying to do. And so I have even more points about this, but it's just like the list goes on. I just feel like this game is so it's taken away so much in terms of the slow, methodical play. And I'll say the last point I have here is Peeker's advantage. People are trying to disprove that Peeker's advantage exists in CS2. Like, I saw there's this Twitter. There's this Twitter guy that I've seen around, and I think he's doing legitimate tests. Like, I think his name was One Bird or something like that, and he's showing that like there was actually you have more time to react in CS2 than CS:GO. I'm just gonna say, like, on a visceral level, it feels hard. It still feels harder to hold angles. And I know this isn't just me getting old. This is like every single person from noob to pro is saying Peeker's advantage is better in CS2. So like I don't know, like I'm gonna trust the people whose feelings are based off of thousands of hours of play, as opposed to looking at a stopwatch and saying like the time to react is the same, because I don't know if it's the models, I don't know if it's just like the way that we're perceiving these images, I don't know if it's how the person perceives it from their perspective who's swinging into the angle, because it feels like you can break up in what used to be a perfect crossfire on Inferno, where there's one guy in water and there's one guy new box. The guy at water would hold contact on the guy swinging into, like on a retake, swinging in from CT. Like the water guy now is losing that fight a lot. Like he's losing the fight as the guy's trying to retake B. And you can't, like the way Astral is played in 2018-19, I'm just going to say it wouldn't work in CS2. Like you just can't play like that anymore, because the guy would swing you, he would get the opening kill, and then you would lose because you didn't peek him. You kind of have to do this like jiggle crouch into him peek if you're the holder, as opposed to in CSGO, if you were holding the angle and you had perfect crosshair placement, you just nail him. Like you just get the shot. But nowadays, you just don't get the shot anymore. Like the guy swinging is the one winning the duel. And I don't think that's peeker's advantage. I think that's just like the way the mechanics of the game work, or something going on that is making it so you can't hold like a perfect crossfire anymore. Like holding what used to be a perfect crossfire now just seems like we need to swing together. Like we need to go for a double swing. We need, like, playing off of each other's contact doesn't feel as strong as it used to.
You constantly have to jiggle or something, because if they catch you, you're dead right away, like instantly. And like one more thing to the smoke thing you said, right? Like just try and notice how many times you see people running through a smoke and still get the kill, where that would never happen in CSGO, never. Or CS Source, probably 1.6 because smokes weren't so hard, right? But I mean, it's just, it feels counterintuitive that you have an advantage running through a smoke, figure out where he is, and still get the jump on him. Like that would never have happened in any certain CS earlier, right? But now, even in the top level, you see a guy swinging through a smoke, boom, boom, one guy dead, and especially on Ancient, like you said, right, where you shouldn't have this advantage, but somehow you do. And I just hate it. Like we have this saying on our team, we've always had that: when in doubt, swing, because that can never be wrong. Like you at least you kind of took the game to your hands instead of just giving it to your opponent, right? So whenever we find ourselves like, oh, we're in this situation where we might be good, but if they do like some kind of something, we just fucked, right? And if that's the case, you just swing back, because that's the only thing you can do. And it's just not CS for me. And I really dislike that. And that actually comes to my last point, where it can tie everything together we talked about so far, is that Sphinx joining Mouse is actually a great upgrade, because you just get more firepower, and the in-game leader right now is becoming more and more irrelevant. Like when I see Mouse played, I saw them play against T2 the other day. It's nothing to do like their tactics are bad or anything, but it's so default, like everyone can do it. And the reason they're winning is because they're winning the duels. It's nothing to do with this, oh, there was a really nice timing and the pathing here and everything. No, it's just like, someone goes up, bangs out two. Okay, super, we won the round. It's like, okay, so you actually makes the in-game leaders more irrelevant to some point, at least on the tactical side. There will always be this leadership and stuff like that. We can talk about that later if you want, but there's just, for me, like a lot of really bad things about the current state of Counter-Strike, and I really hope that they're gonna address some of it in some way or another.
Yeah, by the way, what I think I'll say on this topic as well is like, forget like the term peaker's advantage. I feel like it's just people being reply guys, Maui. The experience clearly with the eye test in pro play, and if you play the game at all yourself, you will feel a difference. Like it isn't just like some great CSGO players complaining that CS2 isn't as good. In fact, I'll even say this: one of the biggest giveaways you have a problem in the game is even the people who are the current top players say they have problems with it, etc. Like that's normally in esports, it's the opposite, because your brain is almost wired to go, no, this is fine actually if you're the one winning, because you're supposed to go, hey, fuck, keep everything how it is now, I'm on top. So when even the best AWPers tell you there's problems holding angles, that's not just like AWPers whining because people peeked them, etc. Like there's two concepts you guys are addressing here. One is, if you know how smokes worked in CSGO, this is why, by the way, Astralis would not be a thing in the same way they were in CSGO, right? In the smoke, the reason why a smoke being thrown down, if you're a casual who plays face it, you're going like, just go through it, bro, do a Stewie 2K. The reason even Stewie 2K had to stop doing that is because when you came through a smoke smoke in CSGO, like, as the person coming out of the smoke, they would see you a fraction of a second before you saw them. So it was like a disadvantage to do that, basically. Well, instead, in CS2, that doesn't even... It seems like it's like even money at this point in time. So, like, actually doing some, like, Stewie 2K smoke criminal bullshit actually, like, works way too effectively, if anything. Like, there's not really even counterplay to it. Then also, the idea of, like, an AWPer holding an angle. That is one of the most universal concepts in CSGO and 1.6. Like, the whole reason why is obvious. The normal mechanics, if you're moving with a rifle, is you have to counter-strafe or stop before you can fire accurately, right? There's a problem if I can just peek, and because the CT holding the angle doesn't see you in time, it just like evens that angle up, evens like difference up, and then suddenly you can just like outfrag the AWPer. If you don't know, guys, if you used to play back in the day and you were playing, the classic example would be like Dust 2 CSGO T-side, good luck going and peeking that like long corner if an AWPer plays there. Like, that's the nightmare. That's why the joke is, if you have like pistols, you wouldn't even just run out, guys. You would do like two people doing a fucking stupid jungle pig jump to try and bait the AWPer, and then two people rushing really quick. It was a nightmare to do that. In CS2, by the way, you peek that corner, to get it like 50-50, you'll just bang the fucking AWPer out, and then the AWP's dead, and you've almost like won the round off kill one of the whole fucking map. So these are like fundamental concepts of even CSGO that just don't exist now. Like, I'll give you the extreme example. It's more extreme if you say it this way, mate. It's not just that Astralis wouldn't be the dominant team. I'll tell you who the greatest team of all time would be if they played CS2. Team Liquid 2019, the one where they just had all the fraggers, like Nitro and Stu. Mate, that team would, that's like Super Mouse. That would destroy CS2, mate. You'd never be able to stop them. Like, all they did on T-side was just bait the CT to peak and then just kill them instantly. And they would just do that over and over again until they could just take a site with like the best fraggers in the world, and then they would just walk on there with their rifles and just win the game. Like, that team would destroy. Like, I was even thinking, Rejin, when you were saying this earlier, if you know the charm of 1.6, it's that in 1.6 there was players at all skill levels whose actual skill set wasn't just shooting you in the head. Like, if people don't know, one of the reasons I think Neo wasn't as good at CSGO is he was amazingly skilled, but he was also just like his feel for when to move around the map and when to go to an area or to swap position. He's like, he had like a cerebral aspect to his game. A classic one I always give the example of is the old Navi like support player Senya. Mate, this guy was a baller on LAN because he would just use positioning against you and just win like a 1v2 or hold some spot where like he could just reposition and get like 3 kills there. Where he's not even supposed, if you don't know, he's supposed to be the least skilled player on their team. He was just using like smarts, setting up traps and stuff. That shit doesn't exist. Like, as we were saying, like a mouse player just jiggle peeks you and just shoots you straight in the head with an AK. Like, there's no counterplay to that. There's no like, oh, I could have studied on the demo. He would peek. No, he still peeked you and shot you straight in the head. Like, it's over. And then also, here's the angle I'll go with on the star player angle. If you think about it, right, there was actually a super team they made at the end of 1.6 in the last year. It didn't last that long. It was when Trace joined SK Gaming. Oh, yeah. The Dinge, right? If you don't know, guys, they had Get Right, Forest, and Trace at the same time. Let me just explain to you what the CS equivalent of that would be. It's not even this Vitality lineup now. It's like if on this Vitality lineup now, where they had Zebu and Rops, they also just got Nico as well. Right? Just think for a second what that team would do in CS2 right now if you just add Nico to fucking give Flames' spots to Nico or something. It'd be game over. Like, again, they're already probably going to win everything with the lineup they have now. That team would actually like annihilate CS2. Like, if you were the teams we talk about every week, Maui, that have like tactics but not firepower, like Pain Gaming or 3D Max, you wouldn't even be able to play in the server with these guys. Again, you'd try all this demo shit and they just shoot you in the head or in your elbow with an AK when you peek them and you'd be dead instantly. So I'm with you. And then also, lastly, the reason why this problem is so hard to diagnose is I think it's a perfect storm of everything at the same time, guys. Like, I think it is a mixture of Pika's advantage. I think the map pool is way too T-sided at the moment. You have none of the old map. That's why when you joke that the MongolZ guy is like, he's making the game even worse. Think about what we had in CSGO. We had fucking Cobblestone. You might think Cobblestone was boring, but you had to have every smoke in that. You can't do anything on the fucking CT side. You had Train was a classic map where like it only became T-sided if you were like the best in the world. Other than that, of course, it's CT-sided. You had Nuke, the most classic CT-sided map of all time. By the way, in the modern day, the reason people like to watch Nuke play, which is a bad sign, Nuke's supposed to be boring, is because there's loads of play on T-side. People are getting down that secret all day long. People are fucking rushing the vents. Like, these were hard moves. If people don't know, that was the Astralis signature strat, was to rush the vent with the fucking smoke. But the difference is, they were just like the best at doing it. Anyone can do that now. Anyone can just have a if you have guns, AKs, you can get someone down there every time now. That used to be like running through a brick wall when you were playing on that map against the top teams. Like, you try getting onto the fucking upper site when like Magisk is there or something, mate. You'll never get there. He'll just mow you all down like a fucking 3k instantly. In this game, you probably 2 people double peek him and one of you probably shoots him in the head. Like, I agree. It actually has fundamentally changed CS. It's not like it's like, what happened to the game I love? Like, it's still CS. But the problem is, I do think that you're making it too extreme. Because I've always said this, Rejin, to bring it all the way back. One of the things, if people don't follow Counter-Strike or famously Quake, is noobs from other games always think because they're skilled games, it's just about having aim. Whereas I always told people, nah, if you ever watch like Quake, for example, that guy Rafa wasn't even the most skilled. He didn't have like the best railgun. He was like a mega tactician, you know. In Counter-Strike, yeah, you have all these sick players. Yeah, we have Kenny S and Simpler, but it's not like they just win just by shooting people in the head. You have amazing players who have like a mind for the game. I'd say people like, by the way, I think people like Nico and MongolZ, sometimes their mind's their best quality in the game, like their game sense, their feel for it. So I do think, unfortunately, we are going to lose something from CS if it just becomes like, Mouse is the best example because no one gives credit to Brolan. If Mouse really is going to be, by the way, guys, like the 3rd or 4th best team in the world, it's going to be a dark time in CS2 because are we just playing CSDM right? Like, is this not Counter-Strike? Is it not a tactical game where we're just shooting people with AKs? If we are, like, okay, that's something. I'm not going to switch and go watch fucking Valorant, but it's not CS. It's not the game I love in that sense.
Exactly.
You know?
No, I think like the best example is like when we have practice and stuff and we watch the game backs and like talk about mistakes we're doing during practice and what to avoid and stuff like that. Like 9 out of 10 times, just like, oh, I just didn't hit my shot and he strafed me and killed me. Right? It's just like, okay, next. Like you don't learn anything. It's just like, okay, raw mechanics, let's go. And
yeah. It's a weird position for the game to be in because in some way I really liked when I didn't like certain parts of how do I frame this? I guess it's cool to see that the people that are in the best individual form are rewarded for it. Okay. But I also just feel like the consistency for teams now should become harder because of this. And I don't think that it should be. It just feels weird that like I feel like I'm just having to change my takes more and more from I'm still adjusting like the hot take from CS:GO to CS2 where it's like I don't have any faith in Brolin as an IGL2.
Okay.
Should I even worry? Should I even worry about this at all? Because everybody's just going to recycle the same Navi playbook anyways. Like, it doesn't matter, you know? So, I guess that takes me to my bad point, though.
Go for it.
I'll just get into it. It is Navi. My bad point's been is Navi right now. The way that they lost to the Mongols, even though we're praising the Mongols for how they were able to win, I just think something needs to change really soon. I feel like they're going to ride this out for the rest of the season because of VRS ranking, the fact that they're going to be gifted a spot in the major. But if it were up to me and the major happened today, I definitely would look into a change because even though Blade downplays the attitude issues of the team, it feels like there's clearly something going wrong there. It does not feel like they're on the same page anymore. And what before was almost them overcoming the odds of them not having the best players because they had the best execution and some great tactics. Everybody's caught up to their tactics. The Mongols knew what plays they were going to run as they were running them most of the time, even with slight mix-ups where it's like, oh, okay, JL instead of being ramp this time is going to be helping on the mid-take on Mirage. It doesn't really throw teams off enough anymore. Like, you can just hear that there's more people there, and so they kind of can just count and they just realize still what the strat is. Navi need to either everybody's. I feel like when Navi last year were in the middle of their run, they really solved Mirage. They really came up with a really solid formula for how you should take mid control, how you should split bomb sites off of it, how you're not really using like as many true lurkers. It's just guys that are going to help you split the bomb site later. And that kind of stuff, everybody just understands it now. And so for them, the big bad point here is like it almost is like they need a honeymoon again. And I feel like the only way to really do that is you got to swap a player out. We see how Mao is sort of stagnated, but now I kind of have a new. It feels like Mao's are almost gaining a new lease on life just because. And I feel like you're a couple players that you could target here is like I think you still, even though the role of the IGL is less valuable now, I wouldn't want to cut LXCB. But the sad thing is if tomorrow Navi say, yeah, we're getting Yimpat for Alexi and Ema's going to call now, I would actually be like, man, I just think it would work. It's kind of like wrapping up two things in one here where it's like the bad of CS2 where you should just upgrade firepower and also that IGLs are less important, along with the fact that Navi is in a position right now where it just doesn't feel like people are they don't like each other as much anymore.
But I think you said it also perfectly earlier, right, Mario? When you said like you see Messinho just go up, bang out bit. Well, if that's how you win a round, what you gonna do about it, right? If you just miss your duel, you miss your duel, right? So then you just need straight up more firepower. And I think, like you say, like you need, of course, confidence in yourself, but you also need confidence in your teammates and stuff. Because if you start not having confidence in your teammate holding their side, you are yourself gonna be thinking about that and probably be more not aware of your own positioning, right? Because I have to go here. Suddenly, Messinho come and bangs out your head, right? So yeah, there could be some to that, right? But like I also think like if only they had like a goat on their roster on the bench, right, somewhere like to bring back, right? Like I mean that would be of course unreasonable to talk about, right? But I mean if they had, they would be probably a fun thing to look into, right? So yeah.
No, that's even the reason why I don't think people get it. Even before they failed, the reason you're always going to have a spicy conversation about Navi is it's the only team that was like number one, where in theory you don't even have to sign a player. You could, if you want to do a drastic upgrade, you're right, Rejin. Like you've obviously just got Simple sat there, and there's even implied value for your Navi because you're already paying some of his salary anyway. So it's like, why not get value for that? So at this point in time, it doesn't look like anyone else is going to sign him. But I do think that pressure does exist. And this is where I don't care what people say in interviews publicly. Like, Blade right now, if he sticks with this lineup, isn't going to say anything. He's not going to hint that Simple fucking comes back, is he? That'd be stupid. Like, what you do is, if you have to bring him back, you just wait and at what point it's like too late, probably after the major and the first season finished. If things go really bad and you're like, let's say it's like the last major, you don't even make top 8, maybe then you have to sit down and have a real thought about like, right, do I actually have to do this? Even though I've said I wouldn't do it and I've hinted that this is what I wanted and I'm going to stick with this lineup. Because I'm with you. The other problem is, I actually did think this was a team that should potentially have thought about gambling for an upgrade in this last off-season. But a bit like Spirit, when you've had so many good results, it's like, you can give people more time. You can just say, you know what, we'll test your theory. Let's see if Magix is good enough in Spirit. Let's see if Imma or Wonderful can make it in Navi. Let's give them like a few more months, and then we'll see, like, do they still end up being good? The problem right now is this. At the moment, everyone actually whines about how there's nobody aside from Vitality and Spirit. Well, it's supposed to be you, Navi. You're supposed to be the other obvious third name that's guaranteed to be in every single semi-final. So in the same way as I said it was good that MongolZ beat you, that's a bad sign when teams like that are beating you at this point in time. And then you look at their squad and it's a downturn in almost every area. Like, first of all, the numbers just aren't as good for those players. It's why I told people, you could tell when they had that amazing run of all those finals, no one actually did think those were the best players in CS2. Like, no one, if you'd have taken those players out and I could like put them in different teams, I could put one in Falcons and one in Vitality, they wouldn't be super players. Some of them probably even have lower numbers. And in fact, you just see this year, the numbers are lower for almost everyone except basically Bit. Like, it turns out Bit was the one legit, like, true generational talent. And if you look at that player, right, if I had to pick a role to be my best role in the whole game, it wouldn't be Bits, for fuck's sake. I would want, like, Imma or Wonderful to be the best player. Like, they're the ones who are going to, like, dominate the game. So the problem is, to me, Bit's like a floor raiser type player. He's not the one that's going to, like, take over the game. And the problem they have in their team, this is also why that Simple angle will always be tantalizing, at least conceptually, Rejin, is whenever you looked at their team, we used to say this last year when they were winning, they don't have a Donk or a Ziwu or a MonolZ. They don't have that guy who could just go, you know what, it doesn't matter that we actually are like a bit washed out with our strats, or this team's adapted, or they're better than us on this map, well, I'll just win anyway. They don't have that player. They don't. They always had to win as like an actual team doing real...
Well, but I would say
go on.
To this, actually, to the counterpoint, actually, is that I actually think they won a lot of rounds by exactly that. JL going out, banging out 3 where he shouldn't be allowed to do that. And I think that's the biggest difference right now to the Navi.
Oh, it's definitely a drop-off, for sure.
And yeah, well, not only him, but I think also Imma is the same, right? And Wonderful as well, right? And I think this is one of the prime examples where I think, as you said it yourself, Maya, right? When the chemistry and stuff drops off, you start losing faith in the team, but probably also yourself, right? And if you don't have confidence in CS, you're not going to make it. Like, you're simply not going to make it because Donk doesn't care. He's going to swing you and you're going to be dead. Messinho doesn't care. He's going to swing you and you're going to be dead, right? So if you don't have this like family vibe thing where everything is just awesome and stuff, and you really trust your mate to pick you up, or even if I fail here, he's going to back me up and do it next time and stuff like that, and you're going to dare to make these plays and do these plays. But if you do it half-hearted, you're just going to get punished instantly. And I think that's what we're seeing with Navi right now.
And then put it this way, I'll just throw this out there. The actual sign, like this is an exact sign if you know the way that teams work, that they know they're in trouble, is that's why, guys, even they have now pivoted to trying to start to play train, because their map pool was bleeding out of their arse, bro. Like, remember, last year, they used to be really good on Ancient too by the end. Like, mate, they have so few, they're basically just Mirage and, like, Inferno, basically. That's it, like... That's it. That's all they've got. So it's why there's also so many teams. Like, if people don't know, this is where you can't just look at the last result. It's not just the MongolZ one we're talking about. Bro, this team got clapped by Saw, and then Ty Lue won a fucking map off them. Like, these are inconceivable results. So no, I'm with you. I think NAVI, I agree, by the way, it shouldn't even be in bad, not ugly. It's just a bad sign right now, mate. Every marker points down, which ties in, though, because I was actually going to do this. Let's do this as a more expansive conversation. I was going to make my bad point, so we can tie it in, the actual response to this comms issue. Because this is one thing I want to get into with you guys. Like, you're a coach, Rejin. Obviously, you've been around the scene. Right, here's the problem. I do agree with Maui. Right, this doesn't just happen out of nowhere. It does happen because this is obviously like frustration because everything's going wrong and they keep having all these matches where things don't work out. And like the joke is, last year, they would have laughed off some of these scenarios if it happened because everything was just going so awesome. They seemed like they had a mega team culture and everything was so smooth. Now it does look like people are frustrated and they're pissed off and people don't like the way things are going. So the problem is, though, the reason I put it as bad is I think it's hard if you're an outsider and just a fan to evaluate this because people are going really harsh on that comms thing. If they're like, they're acting like Alexi B and Emma hate each other, or like, you know, they're fucking getting in fist fights backstage or something. Like, here's the problem. I think on some levels it's a bad omen for the overall NAVI squad, but I also do think people are maybe overblowing that part. Like, by the way, I won't say which teams, but there's some people that are way spicier than that behind closed doors when they're having a fucking argument. There's people that, I mean, I think wasn't it even fuck, who was it? Oh, it was Dupree who said that basically, like, I've actually hinted this in the past. If people don't know, by the way, Glaive and Meg supposedly argued all the time in Astralis. They had, like, totally different views on how things should be done and how they should play the game and all that jazz. Like, spoiler, maybe certain people in Falcons had to find that out the hard way. Anyway, whatever. That's just a free inside joke for people listening. Right, so what do you think, Rejin? What do you think about this thing of people... Navi did have this outburst where EPL highlighted it and then everyone's... I can't tell if everyone's going mad or if it's a joke or what.
Yeah, it's just hard to take it out of context, right? Because like, you have like, how long is the clip? Like 20 seconds.
Yeah, it's not very long.
You know, so you have to make the best judgment out of those, right?
Thing is, so out of context, it is a masterpiece how they've cut it, because it is almost it's almost like him just going like, "Hey guys, that was funny," and then Alex would be like, "Shut the fuck up, I hate you." Like, not really, but that's how it feels when you watch the clip. Like, what the fuck? Okay,
yeah,
like...
I think like from my standpoint, it's never good to have a talk like that during a game. Like you don't want that. You want positive vibes and stuff like that. So what it tells me is that. It tells me that people are starting to questioning Alexi. Right. Like if I have to really analyze it, right, with this small clip, right?
Yeah.
Then it tells me that people are starting to question it because what he's basically saying is that every time I'm making a call, it's going to be questioned the round after, or they should have changed it somehow or whatever, right? That's what I'm hearing, but that's not necessarily the case, right? It could be just whatever, right? So I think it's definitely being overblown out of proportion, but at the same time, I've worked with Kerrigan, who is, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best in-game leader of all time. And it's not always because tactical side. Of course, he's a super smart player, but it's not like he's like blade tactical, you know, when we talk about these things, right? But what he does is that he leads a team. He's a leader. Like when he say jump, no one says why. They ask how high.
There was actually a thing someone linked on my Discord, I think it was, Rejin, which is way back in the day, I did an interview with Jacob, who used to play, obviously, with like FaZe very briefly when Carrigan joined. And he actually told this story. He said something like when Carrigan joined FaZe initially, he just said something to them like, look, like every call I won't be right, but just trust the call, basically. Like, just shut the fuck up and listen, just trust what it is, and then we'll figure it out afterwards. But that gives implied what you're saying.
And it's just like being a leader is so much more than calling the right tactic at the right time. Yes. It's about trust, that you have to trust the team. And I think now we talk about Kerrigan. That's exactly what happened back in 2018 when he got booted from FaZe, right? When they lost the Boston major and stuff like that, and they lost trust in him. And you could see it right away when he called something. The decisions from when he made the call to when the plan was executed was maybe delayed by 1 or 2 or 3 seconds. And those seconds is like, that's like an hour in CS time, right? You like 1 second in CS, people don't understand how much a second is in CS compared to when you make the call, when you do it, right? And I think when you start losing people's trust in that way, because fuck the calls. Like, the calls doesn't matter in the end, because you can win on a bad call if just everyone follows that call instantaneously right away. It might not be the best call, but we do it because we trust it and we just go for it, right? We win so many rounds, or we won so many rounds in Mouse back in the days where Kerrigan would just say, we made a pre-plan saying, okay, if we hear this nade, we're just gonna be like their 3B. Let's say we play Inferno, right? And we would react instantly up middle. That would be our game plan. Simple as that. It's not like any crazy flashes and stuff. And that would be it. And then when Kerrigan heard this specific nade, rush A, and people just did it right away. And oftentimes they would be 4A, and we still won the round because like people would just be like going up with such confidence that there will only be 2 players there, that you would just be like bang bang, right? And then it's just like won the round anyway, right? So I think it comes down to this trust thing and how well you are performing as a leader, and not to kiss Valdez ass or anything, but that's what he's bringing. He's not bringing this highly tactical depth, but he's just a natural leader. That's why I wanted to work with him, because I know how good a leader he can be, and he frags out as well, right? So that's like a plus side on that, right? So I think these leaders are becoming way more important than having these let's call them blades of the Counter-Strike.
No, I know
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Or myself, because I love to create new tactics, smoke stuff like that. I just see it become more irrelevant, because like it's all about speed and confidence and trust. So yeah, I don't know. I went on a tantrum there, but I don't know.
No, it's good. Tangent, yeah, all good. What do you think, Maui?
The clip of Alexi. I feel like I've actually started listening so in depth to these Kadia listen-ins because they just don't know where to cut them, and they just put on anything at this point. Like, I feel like there was a little bit of judgment that was exercised for comms clips in the early stages, because I think what was it, like Blast, for example? Like, Blast was doing the listen. I was gonna say Kadia listen-ins actually, but they were doing the listen-ins, and you would just generally, like, if it even aired slightly too far on the tactics side, I'm pretty sure that these orgs would just like ring up Blast and be like, hey, like, that had one thing about it.
Okay.
And now it's like sometimes we get full mid rounds coming on. Like, they put on, I don't know if people saw this, but between Liquid's map 2 and 3, I think in their 2-2 game
nuke, right?
for the playoffs, they had NAF's POV with all the comms of like the whole game. And it was like
shit,
everything.
right. Okay.
It was like everything that was happening, and I was like, there's no cuts here at all. Like, they're just playing it out. It was during like an ad break, so I don't think people watched it, because it was like, yeah, between maps 2 and 3, it was like 10 minutes of NAF comms and the whole team's comms, and I was like, wow, that's like the most info I've gotten from a team for quite some time, and I just don't even know who signed off on this entirely. But you could hear why they were calling their mid rounds and how Twist was like coming up with ideas and everything like that. And I was like, this feels like, if I'm Liquid, I'm a little bit upset that this is actually out there.
Sure.
But yeah,
or they just don't care anymore because there's no tactics in CS and just swing anyway. So just like, fuck it.
They're just gonna run up porch anyways. They're just smoking moto and flashing in anyways. Doesn't matter.
Listen, anyone can call the mid to B, Maui. Anyone can do that bit.
That was a wild stat, by the way. But yeah, for the Alexi B emo clip, I also just think, like, when you're working with people this closely, you can just stay a little bit more to them. I don't think they're seeing it like, oh my god, how could Alexi say anything bad to emo? It's like, if you're working with someone for like 2 years, you might snap at them on something eventually, and like the tone that people have is all just different with each other, and it's like it is kind of the HR snowflake era of people just thinking that anything that is even lightly disparaging to another person is just way too far and gone. And it's like, yeah, I'm glad we don't have abusive workplace relationships where it's like Gordon Ramsay is normalized, or like, I don't want everybody to be Fletcher from Whiplash to throw symbols at me. Like, I am like on that side of things, but I also do think that a little bit of sternness at times just to move on is important. And also, having listened to the comms of Alexi B on his past teams when at events before, like, sometimes he just needs people to shut the hell up. Like, sometimes he needs to call the next strategy. Like he needs, because like, dude, you have such a limited amount of time when a round is over that if you want to put something even moderately more complex in motion, you have to say like, okay, instead this round of our normal 3A default, we're gonna do like JL, you're gonna go underpass with Ema. Like he needs that time. He needs that time to say something. So like corrections, and I also like in live match situations, I also think like little adjustments that should be gone over in prac time before like in your next theory session or your next like hour of server time. Leave it to then. Like we don't need the light adjustment there. I'm team Alexi. That's all I'm saying. I'm team
Put
Alexi.
it this way, on this one, I am also team Alexi, but one of the reasons why is I actually feel like this is where people have forgotten a narrative in Navi. Remember, the narrative of why, when Ima's stats were bad a year ago, they kept him, is they said his whole role is going to be, he's going to be the secondary voice in the team and make calls, right? Here's the problem here. Ima didn't get the memo on what a secondary caller does. A secondary caller doesn't just like wait for the caller to call and then overrule him and change the strat. Like what you do is if you have a really good adjustment, you throw it out there. Like you have sort of a green light to put your input in, but you don't do it every time because as we're talking about with this Carrigan example, you're gonna actually make the caller himself feel like, is any of our fucking calls right? Can we just do what I'm saying? Like the point is, if you have essentially like a really amazing, like you've seen an angle. By the way, the best one's obviously going to be when it's something to do with your position. Maybe you're seeing something with how you're conditioning a spot on T side and you're just saying, look, actually, if we just switch it up like this, it'll work better. That's good. But what you've got to do if your Immer is, whereas before you wouldn't have said anything, now you're saying too much. You've got to pick your spots better for that one. Because I actually totally get that Alexi B frustration. Like, I know exactly what Rejin means. There's a type of IGL who's really smart. And so people know he should be the tactician, but they aren't always the person who has like complete control of the team. And so in this scenario, it's like people are just trying, they think they're helping is the worst thing. When they add in their bullshit, which by the way, sometimes they're not even like, if you look at the way Emma was saying it, they're not even always saying like, do this instead. They go, and we can also do this. It's like, can we just do the thing I'm saying? Like, can we just by default trust my call and then we'll fix it if we need to? I'm with you as well, Maui, on that one. Like, some of this shit doesn't have to be done right now. Like, you're actually just stepping on my toes.
But I think also like this is where people like are with the in-game leaders and second callers and stuff like that. People are, excuse my friends, fucking retarded. Like, sorry to say, but like it's so stupid to listen to and see. Like, oh, isn't Flex calling CT side D2? Why the fuck would he be calling? He's then jumping on B Mirage. What is you call? Hey, guys, you in middle, can you do that? Like, what are you talking about? Like, people seriously don't understand CS. Same goes for secondary caller. A secondary caller is exactly like you're saying, Duncan. Not a guy who's sitting there, oh, we could also rush B. That's not his job. His job is when there is no call and he's opposedly, hopefully, on the other side of the map, he can help out Alexi and be like, oh, we can do Navi now, or we can do Gambit, whatever they call it, the tactics, right? And then we do it because he has the opportunity. That's the idea with the secondary caller, to help out mid-round,
okay,
or to help out when there is not an idea or whatever, right? But people have to stop analyzing and understand these things, like with
sure.
the CT sides and stuff like that, and get your head, like, understand CS before you open your mouth. Like, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's so many times I got a little bit of rest there.
No, it's all good. Also, I will just say as well, I actually just personally, I actually just enjoyed it as entertainment, Maui, like them just bickering like an old married couple, like, oh, I'm going to take the A94, but you know you'll never get there in 20 minutes if we do that. What about the traffic? Oh, well, this is, oh, well, you want to drive then? Am I driving or are you driving? Like, I knew you'd speak to me this way. I should listen to my mother and never married you. Like, they are doing that shit, which, by the way, is also when you've been in a team for a while and you get like that friction, don't you, when you just like, you've annoyed each other.
Right?
Yeah, of course.
Like, they are traveling together.
Yeah.
They're sleeping in the same rooms many times. Let's get solo rooms.
Yeah.
They're practicing 8 hours a day. They're talking theory. Like,
by the way, that's
together.
even an underrated part. Remember, because Navi hasn't changed roster. They've had this roster since like blast fall of fucking 2023, guys. Like, every other team pretty much has changed their player by now. So they are also people who've been together a long time at this point in time. They've already gone through all the traditional methods of solving all the problems. Right, let's do the ugly portion. So what is ugly right now, Rejin?
Yeah, well, it ties in again. This is like the series of tying ins today, but it ties in with my first point with the online CCT and moving to LAN and everything. It's just like the cheating and match fixing and stuff like that. And I know people are gonna say it anyway. Hey, Rejin, you also cheated with the bug and everything.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
Got you on that one.
Okay. Let's move on, right?
You got me there, intrusive voices, Rejin. Go on.
Yeah. But anyways, like, it's just a big fucking problem. Like,
sure.
You guys probably just know this, but we have a Danish called Power League, like where all the best Danish teams except Astralis, Heroic stuff are playing in. and one of the teams were caught cheating using some, I don't know what cheat it was.
Right.
It was detected by the entity software called Arcross, I think it's called.
Oh, okay.
And
yeah.
and they found like some cheat. I don't know what it was, if it was radar, what it was, right? But they found evidence for him to be cheated, as well as match fixing and stuff like that for the same games and stuff. So they're cooperating with these betting partners and everything, right? And I just feel like also you mentioned the Kassat tweet with the match fixing, everything with the online things, and sometimes it looks really dodgy and sketchy, and that's just a thing that. And we're not even talking about the matchmaking cheating thing.
No.
I'm literally talking about like the professional scene or like semi-professional, right? Where there is a lot of problems and also with this VRS coming in, and there's going to be a lot of open qualifiers anyone can sign up to. Like, I'm quite sure that I know there is some teams cheating, like 5 guys coming in with 50 hours of Counter-Strike on their game time, right? Stuff like that.
Classic.
And you just get your head blown off like, okay, is this new dongle? What is, you know what I mean? Like, so it's a massive issue. And this is why I actually had my VRS as a good point for the LAN events, because it ties in with that you are avoiding a lot of these things. And I do believe that you're going to a LAN event, you're not going to be match fixing there. Of course, there's always going to be, you can do it, right? But I think
shout out Kaylee one time.
You would, yeah, I mean, like you would probably not do it as often as you would online, right? Because the matches in between are going to be far enough, right? So, yeah, that's my bad thing. I just, because of this news in Denmark with the one team cheating, it was actually the team with the Mert.
Oh,
and,
right, okay.
Tensky.
Okay.
Who used to be like, like used to be pro players and stuff, right? And they were on this team, right? And yeah, it's just a shame that it comes to it, right? And yeah.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
I don't know where to necessarily.
I mean, put it this way, Maui. I know you heard the same things. Like, it's actually a thing that's even percolated through to the talent who work these tier 2 online tournaments. Like, even they're like low-key bombed out because they feel like the results aren't legit sometimes.
I mean, there's literally caster highlights of games where they're just watching it, and I feel like I've heard Neokai's voice one time on something where he was like, I don't know how he knew he was there, or something like that, you know? Like, you're just questioning what's going on, and I feel like now would be a very, very strange time and difficult time to even be full sended as a good tier 2 caster, because you also don't want to be the guy that in a crazy play then is used, and it's like, look at, even the caster was fooled and this guy was cheating. It's like, being there almost feels as humiliating as like, I don't even know what I'd rather be. I don't know if I'd rather be the guy that overcasts something that ends up being cheating, or I'd want to be the caster that is known for being a little bit suspicious. I don't think there's a win-win for that kind of situation. So yeah, I guess that's the perspective that's a little bit closer to home.
What I will say on this topic is, the thing I hate the most, I'm with you, by the way, Rejin, this is actually also why we need VRS to work properly and then invite people to the tier 2 lands so we can actually see who's good and who... Like, essentially, if someone is the next donk, we just want to find out really soon, because the real problem you have is, I've always thought the most... This might sound like a weird counterpoint, right? But follow me on this one. The weirdest one ever, to me, that people get mad about from CSGO, where it was a really good player who got accused of cheating, was Rops, right? Because here's the weird thing, Rejin, if you ever actually saw how he played, if people don't know, his style even on FPL back then was just like a more primitive version of this style. He was like the ultimate lurker player who could just always know where you are and like be really smart with his timing. Right, the problem with that is, right, that player actually is the easiest one to accuse of cheating, because it looks like you're just wall hacking or using the, you know, fucking aim key or something. You're using something that's giving you an edge because you know basically better on the map where everyone is than the top pro players. But whereas the difference is when someone just headshots, they could either be aimbot or they could just be really fucking... They could just be like Boros, just be really talented with a crosshair. That's totally fine. That type of player, I understand when people accuse the Boros type player of being a cheater. They just think, oh, he's just too good, isn't he? Right? The reason why the people like a Rops player are always going to get accused of cheating is because basically, even when that player does go to LAN, just because of nerves and stuff, he's probably not going to instantly read everyone's mind in the first tournament. So unfortunately, it's going to look like, oh, he was cheating. See? He can't do all the shit they did. So the worst thing about this sort of environment is it makes everyone by default just assume someone who's like too good at the game, especially in terms of like positioning and knowing where you are on the map in like 1v3s and always like doing a crazy lurk off the side where the team postures like they're going to attack that site, but then they don't, and you're just waiting to rotate. That just looks like the worst sort of cheating, unfortunately. So the real thing that actually sucks for me is if there is some genius guy out there like a fucking bit type anchor or Rops, they're not going to get the credit. We're actually just going to assume they're just hacking because it's an online game and we don't know who you are. So it'll actually be even harder for that guy, by the way, to make his name, because there isn't some Rops thing where he's going to go to Face It office and play online. That's like some shit from 10 years ago, guys. Now he'll just get told he's cheating, and then tomorrow he'll load into his 17th CCT tournament of the day. Like, you know what? Fucking hell. Like, it's outrageous. I know at this point in time. Like, the joke is, I should almost do it, Maui. I should bring back those skits from Flashpoint where it's like fake news headlines, like da-da-da-da-da-da. Right, here we are. It was today announced by ESL that they've got new hyperbolic time chamber technology. Teams will be able to play 17 qualifiers in a single afternoon. Like, that's like the sort of world we're going to with fucking CS now. It's outrageous in it. Meanwhile, on LAN, if you don't know, this is how bad the haves and the have-nots are. It's an actual complaint. It's not even totally wrong. You know what they actually all bitch about in Vitality about that last major? Is that because they smurfed the RMR, they had loads of time off from the RMR to the major, and then because they 3-0'd the major, they were only in the second Swiss, they had loads of time from the end of the Swiss to when they played the playoffs. And it's true, if you ever look it up, over like a month, they only played like 5 days or something mental. But the joke is, they're playing 5 days in a month. Then the other one's like, I'm playing 5 days in a day. That's like the world of CCT. So, and then I'm with you as well, by the way. You also just can't have it in a game because our game is so heavily funded by betting money. You can't have everything that actually has real teams in have match fixing. Like, that is going to literally scare people off. And also, you're going to end up with this scenario quickly to bring it back. This is what actually originally fucked up VRS this year, was that you had people like CCT say, look, the way that we deal with people that we know are match fixing is we shadow ban them from entering the tournament. And then Valve was like, what are you doing? You have to let everyone compete fairly. And you're like, oh, what are we doing here? Like, no. Like, spoiler. It's not. I don't even know who actually did get match fixed. So I'm just going to do a joke from CS:GO. Look, if fucking Killerfish signs up, you just ban them immediately, mate. They're all fucking match fixing / cheating. If the joke in my day would be, if you are German, you are guilty until assumed innocent at this point. You know, until proven innocent. Like, if I don't know you and you're German and you're playing CS and you're beating me, I'm just going to assume you're cheating. One, that's an old ethnic thing I can do as a British person. And then two, that's just true from CS:GO as well. So I actually am sick of that part, because the problem is we actually had like a soft way of getting around this, which is TOs and betting companies just ban people and blacklist them if they did too many dodgy things. The issue now is the Valve system actually means you can't do that. You have to just treat it like until they're caught by VAC, they're not cheating. And spoiler, Valve, if you're listening, the idea that I have to be caught by VAC to be cheating, like, what fucking year is this, bro? It's not like 2003 or something, you idiot. Like, you're not catching anything. What are you talking about? You're not catching people live.
But even like the best entity system, like the Across Face Identity and stuff, it doesn't work.
No, of course not.
So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, this is the level where they all got the private cheats. Exactly. They're not fucking. Yeah. They're not actually before the game googling like CS. Well, I know exactly. Like, come on then, Maui. What is your ugly point?
Mine is that it's a small detail I noticed when just watching so much CS lately, is that, and especially with interacting with Twitch chat as much as I have been co-streaming the games that I've been covering, it's just that it's just because we're like, it's kind of an observing gripe, but it's something that I feel like is very hard to avoid. It's that because we're almost always on site hits in the perspective of the CT defender, we almost actually underrate how well constructed some of these site hits are.
Right.
And we end up being overly critical of anchors and oppers that are defending these kinds of positions. And so it's almost kind of like a live match observer eye test betrayal here, where if you watch this round back, but then it's almost kind of like the case for AI observing that's done 10 seconds later, where they actually end up just showing everything from the perspective of the person that gets the multi-kill. I think we would end up just doing so much more in terms of, I guess, like hero building, where we would actually just see like, okay, if they delayed the broadcast by 10 seconds and the guy got to see, especially a studio environment too, where there's no crowd. I feel like this is like the perfect environment to do something like this. And the problem is, like, I really rate the people that are observers. I feel like their job is pretty hard and everything like that, but it's just one of those things where it's like, This is, man, I mean, I feel like I might just cost people like tens of thousands of dollars in their livelihood by saying this, but in reality, it's just like the observers. It's just like, if you were in a studio environment or an online environment, why don't you just delay the broadcast by 5 seconds and just just put the POV on the guy that gets the multi-kill in the round? Like, because then the casters will then just cast a multi-kill. It's going to be more exciting. We're going to act like people's individual level is way better. We're going to, like, because so often we see a guy on a site defense, he gets full flash, and like while half blind, he gets kind of like an awkward spray. I think a lot of people in Twitch chat are going to clown him because it's like, how the fuck did he miss that? But it's like, he was still pretty blind. It's just that the observing you can't really see it because, you know, the observer, when you're observing a game and watching it through a live stream, you're never really, your screen doesn't get full white. That would just be the worst broadcast product ever. But now, like, I don't really know how blind that guy was because he whiffed his shot, but this guy's a professional player. I kind of would hope that he was actually just barely blind. But I'll even just put it like this. I'm not really sure when I'm watching a stream anymore how blind was that guy? Like, because sometimes pros seem like they're fairly blind, like they're like 3/4 blind, but then they still just nail a dude in the head, and I'm like, well, he did it, but then this other guy looked like a bot, so I don't really know anymore, like how good was that site exec, and I almost just wish, yeah, that's why it's an ugly point, because the game looks worse because we're getting perspectives of people who were dying when that doesn't look like it's a hard kill, but with the combination of like peeker's advantage, not knowing how blind the guy actually is when watching, it just looks like everybody sucks.
But I think actually that you're completely right about that, Maui, and because I have the best example for that ever. I remember Henry was casting a game. We were Ice Challenge in Mouse playing against NAVI, playing that on Nuke. We did our homework, so we fucked up their smoke lines every single time outside, and then the caster would say, oh, they missed their smokes. They don't know how to throw the smokes outside. They made Navi look completely imbeciles and didn't give any credit to Frozen, who denied the light stuff. But how can the caster know? We don't see it, right?
Of course.
And it's really, really difficult to see all these things. And I think that's, unless you're delaying the whole broadcast, as you're saying, Maui, or you have some kind of segment after showing a breakdown of a round, which you are doing sometimes, right? I'm not maybe you do, but some people are doing it right. Because I do think there's a lot of things happening on the map where, let's say, the side hit, like you're saying, is happening, but in theory, or not in theory, in practical, it was actually like the mid fake plus the A thing happening that led to all these things, right? But you don't see all the details in it, and that's also kind of the charm in CS, right? That you, as a viewer, you only see the kills basically, or the whiffs when you're blind, wherever it is. You don't see all the build up to it, right? So yeah, I don't know, but I completely agree with you on that one.
I mean, the joke there would be, you could just make that reference, because people always say the famous singer Stevie Wonder isn't actually 100% blind. He has that like blindness where you can see like edge movements, but you can't see like specifics. So the joke is his name's even perfect, because I wonder how blind he is. So in this scenario, that's all you're doing. You're on Stevie Wonder, start smiling. You're like, how blind was he? Because I'm with you. The downside in the game is it does do that like icon when you get the kill, where it's like that can be partial blindness for sure. I know what you mean, because I always wonder, because in 1.6, because it didn't used to affect the sound, that's how you get the kill if you're blind in 1.6. You just use the sound to sort of like auto-locate that they're still in the crosshairs roughly on them, so you can hear roughly when they're running, etc. So that's how people like nothing, except when they're online in their movie. That's how they used to get the blind kill in CS 1.6, if they're on the reference there. Also, the joke is, Maui, if you can do that to the observers, then they could just do that to you. So I'll just stand in for the observers. Here's what we could also do, observers. We could also just make an AI bot called Maui GPT, where what it does is it just, as a spider, crawls over HLTV forums and Snake Pit channel on Twitter, and then it just crowdsources like edgy takes, and then it puts them into a format where basically someone from the Balkan region would consider it actually certifiably insane, and then it just puts them on the internet for, I don't know, money and clicks or whatever they say Maui does it for. So... And then, look, listen, we can keep going further, though. We could also have, like, a fucking bot for me that goes, the joke is, here's the thing, or, like, what people don't know, actually, is, or, like, Cassad, it's a hot take. Like, essentially, about 90% of what we do at this point in time is just soundboard material. But I'll tell you what, it is the best soundboard in Counter-Strike. I'll tell you that right now. Listen, HLTV confirmed soundboard. That's not even vaguely on the same level. Our soundboard... Top notch, top notch. Right, okay, the last point of the show, I've saved it until now, and I've phrased this very carefully. If you notice, I always try on my ugly to really try and fit the idea. It has to actually be something ugly. It's not good, it's not bad, it's something in this, like, in a spot that's really uncomfortable. I think this one's easy, boys. It's easy. It's MongoLZ in G2. Like, bro, G2 has some issues anyway, but remember, if you actually saw the end of last year when people said it was like because his girlfriend broke up with him, whatever, and early this year, MongoLZ wasn't cooking that much early this year. He was kind of having his own issues. Bro, this event was a fucking nightmare for you all, because, you know, when I always compare him to, like, Old Simple or whatever, this was like some Old Simple shit where, like, no matter how hard he carries, it's just impossible to win the game. Like, some of these series, boys, I was watching, I was like, He can't lose this game after this. Like, he's just actually like 3K'd him every round. And then it's like the one time you just like do a 2K, it's like, you lose the round. Better luck next time, mate. So if no one goes and looks, his stats at this event will actually melt your brain. Like, they don't
it's
even
like
make
140.
sense. Yeah, against like everyone. He's, by the way, even forget like the rating. He had something like 1.7 was the KD, by the way. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Like, unironically, this would be like one of the best performances of the year, and it's a team that was just irrelevant in this tournament and had no chance to win it whatsoever. And the reason why I think it's really ugly is because the one area this isn't like the old school Simple and Zero examples is, bro, this is why if you are people like Snacks and Taz, you are never beating the allegations. Because when we look at your team, I think there are a lot of in-game leaders and coaches would like die for a roster like this, mate. Like, this isn't even like, it's not like it's MongoLZ and they're all shit players. Mate, most of the players on the lineup are good, if not really good. Like, Malbs and fucking Heavy God can both be good fraggers. Like, it's actually inconceivable. So that's why I picked it as ugly. It's not bad. It's just ugly, mate. Like, I hate it when it's not like you have no help. It just doesn't work. Like, this team just doesn't work. Thoughts, boys? Rejin, what we going on this, mate?
Yeah, I mean, like, to be a little selfish, I would love to coach that team. Like, I'll bring some good shit to that team. No, I don't know. Like, I'm sure Tess doing a fine job. Not as good as mine. But, I mean, it's weird because, like, when I look at the players, Heavy God, I work with him. I think he's incredibly talented. He's really good at his positions. I would have signed him before they signed Nexa for G2 for sure. I think Melps, really interesting. I think coming in and taking over for what Nico did, impossible. It's like the difficulty impossible, right? That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Then you have MongoLZ who's banging out things. Then you have a Hunter and a Snacks, where I'm like, why? I mean, like, you're bringing in Heavy God, you sell Nico, you have MongoLZ. Why would I just don't see it? Like, I don't see why. And this is nothing against Hunter. I love him. Snacks as well. I just think if you're a G2, you want tournaments, you definitely take those two out of the equation and bring in two other players. And the thing here is, like, everyone is saying, let's bring in Shui. Well, here's the problem with that. He needs to do all the bitch roles then. And Shui didn't do that in Mouse. Let's just be honest. Like, he was connector player as Mirage and stuff like that. But he needs to be over to, so, and that could also be a problem why he got removed from Mouse as well in the first place, right? So I think is you just need upgrades and firepower, and then you need a system to play in, and that team is gonna win trophies. It's that simple. Like, but I don't see a system. I don't see, when I see them play, what I see is exactly like you said before, Duncan. MongoLZ is like, okay, guys, I can't do anymore. My shoulders are broken. My back hurts. I can't carry anymore, right? And they still manage to fumble the ball, right? So something fundamentally is wrong, and it comes down to a system problem, in my opinion, when I see them play. And it will be fixed the best by getting in. The easiest fix would be getting Carrigan, right? And then you would probably have fixed right away, and he will bring them to win trophies right away. Probably also, you could maybe keep Hunter then. Probably I would personally replace him if I was in G2 and get an upgrade there, in my opinion, just because the firepower is so heavy right now, right? So yeah, it's a shame, but I also think like this, like, if I'm MongoLZ, I'm not staying. Like, why would I stay?
It's his, what he was doing at Pro League. It almost, and I feel like this is the ZywOo fans are gonna come just raging at this one, but it almost reminded us, just like, okay, yeah, he is one of the best, arguably 2-3 players in the world, that because obviously we've discredited ZywOo for being an EPL merchant and farming those tournaments, but now
yeah, but look
so
at
now
MongoLZ in EPL though.
Yeah, but look at how good he did this time. Yeah.
True.
No, but the reason we're excited about it is because he was on a downtrend, and it was like he clearly wasn't playing up to his standard ever since the Shanghai Major, and now to see him bounce back like this and have this kind of carry job is just absurd. The one stat that I've been really keying into since they brought in that firepower tab on HLTV is damage per round win, because to me that kind of indicates how hard of a carry job he's doing. And so, like, for example, ZywOo, let's just say, like, ZywOo, #1 player in the world according to HLTV in 2023, the damage per round win that year for him was 104. So it's like he's doing well. Yeah, he's doing over 100 ADR when they're winning rounds, but like Donk blew it out the water with last year. He's like 124 damage per round win. Like, he was carrying Spirit anytime they won a round. At EPL, MongoZ had 123. Like, it was like basically he put up like donks a year in a tournament, and for him to bounce back like that makes me excited. As for the greater picture of G2 and what's going wrong with them, I mean, I do still blame Snacks. I think he's by far the weakest link on this roster for a handful of reasons. I think the calling actually is not entirely in line with like what I would say is the best type of calling today. But beyond that, I think that if he doesn't call, which he doesn't on the CT sides, he should be a better anchor. Like, I actually boil it down sometimes to his individual ability too, because if he's putting up the worst numbers at all of Pro League, practically speaking, with the exception of like people just coming in dead last place, yeah, he should probably be doing better on CT side, given he's not calling. Like, what usually impedes you as an individual, as an IGL, is that while you're looking at the radar, you can't focus on your screen. Well, if he's not calling on the CT side, why is he the worst CT side player on their team by far now? So that is a legitimate concern I have for him. He should be a better individual on that side. And yeah, I think Heavy God's still great. This wasn't the best tournament for him, all in all. Malb's still trying to fill the shoes of Nico. Like there are little things I can pick at on this team. Like, yeah, like if you said like list all the things wrong with G2, I'd have a list of like 12 things wrong with it. But the #1 marquee reason is still Snacks is out on this team for me. Like, it doesn't yet. Like, Rejin's correct that Shuhei wouldn't fit him role for role, but I know that we'd have a bit better calling, and I also know that he wouldn't miss nades, because Snacks has missed nades on like so many key moments for this team also, which has really nerfed them as they're trying to like win a round. So I see that on top of the inability on CT side. I see that on top of weird T side rounds, which are hard carried by individual pop-offs. And I'm like, I just want somebody different. I still just want somebody different on the team. Yeah, a lot of things. I could keep going.
I agree with you there. Like, I agree with you. I just went in to look at the stats, right? And you have 3 players with under 1 rating. I think Heavy Cup was a 101 or something like that. You're not gonna win any tournaments by having 3 players under 1 rating, right? You have Malps in 113, you have MongoZ 147, right? Like, so what I would say is that if Hunter was at Malps level, then I would argue that, okay, we can have a player like Snacks being that bad individually, then I would then that would be okay, I would say, because then you have already a MongoZ who is putting up 0.17 numbers higher than he needs to, right? So he kind of makes up for what's next missing, right? Of course, like, but in the end, yeah, you need more firepower in this era, and I think you could put almost any 2 good players in, and they will instantaneously make the team better, like, in my opinion.
Yeah, like, I mean, for the year, just do like top 20 filter. Snacks is just the lowest rated player. I by the people that believed in Snacks, I was sold on this idea that he was going to be a firepower upgrade for HooXi. He might actually be worse. I think he's on that same level. So yeah, that's my final point on him.
Yeah.